in. Let me. Okay, I think you're ready. Go for it.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending the University of North Florida's Sport Management webinar series. Today, we will be discussing how COVID-19 has impacted our events, sports, high school athletics, and the strategies to return back to these events under new guidelines. We are proud to say that 3 of our panelists are UNF Sport Management advisory members, and one of our panelists is a UNF Sport Management alumni. So we have Brian Carroll, who's the Senior Vice President of Global Media Distribution for the LPGA. We have Kennedy Talley, the Senior Director of Administration and Partnerships at Airstream Ventures. We have Tammy Talley, the Athletic Director of Duval County Public Schools, and Laura Lasco, the Executive Director of Girls on the Run. These panelists will be providing us with information about the return and reopening to play while dealing with COVID-19. During this webinar, if there are any questions from audience members, don't be afraid to drop them in the chat section, as we will try to get to as many of them as possible. In consideration of the COVID-19 pandemic, safety measures and precautions must be taken when approaching a return to various activities. Currently, the only sports that have been allowed to return have been those where social distancing is obtainable, while still following local state government guidelines. As we know, fans are currently not allowed at these events. When the return to sports is complete, a daily non-contact temperature will be conducted before every practice or competition. These temperature checks will be conducted on every athlete, coach, and official. So let's start with the discussion of the effect of COVID-19 on the business model of sports. Our first question, how has COVID-19 impacted your organization's operations? Tammy, would you like to start?
Yes, sure. So for us, we started about 6 weeks ago with what we call return to activity. And the way it has changed for us is our student athletes and coaches, upon entering campus, they have to wear a mask. They also have to get a temperature check. And we created a QR code for everybody to fill out a questionnaire. And the student athletes and the coaches can take their phone, they hover over the QR code, they fill out the 9 or 10 questions, and then anybody who answers yes to the questions, we pull them aside. We're able to keep all of that in a log for our attendants, for our athletic trainers, our team physicians to review, so that if we have to do anything for the Department of Health with contact tracing, we have all that documentation.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Brian, would you like to share?
Sure. We've, I wish I had $1 for every time we use the word unprecedented or new normal or, any of those kind of things. So I'll try not to do that. But for us at the LPGA, it's been a nonstop process of trying to figure out how to come back. And we talked to our tournament organizers, our sponsors, various states and cities, medical professionals, different countries. Let's try to figure out how we can make it all work. You try to provide value to everybody, whether it's a broadcast partner or a sponsor. Everybody kind of takes a hit somehow in this, but we've tried to do some esports content. A lot of different leagues have. We did that as well, and then work closely with our network partners here in the States. It's the Golf Channel for us about what is our new schedule, how's it going to look. So it's been a major disruption, obviously, and everybody, you have to adapt and be flexible and try to make it all work with everybody that you work with.
I'll go next. So like Brian, it's been a new normal, and we hate to use that too. The pandemic hit right about the middle of our season. In the spring season, we have 2 seasons at Girls on the Run. So we ended up just trying to do a Girls on the Run at home, which was just a couple lessons to stay focused on our core values. Obviously, all of our physical part of our program ended. We could not have our end of season 5K, which we normally do and have about 2,500 people in it. So we ended up just doing sort of a celebration drive-through with the girls so we could give them all of their stuff, including their medals, and then encourage them, like Christy's daughter, to go and do their own 5K. Now, moving forward, we're looking at, and the schools, we mostly operate out of the school, so it's a challenge for us to figure out what's happening, but we're going to be utilizing parks as much as possible and do a fluid model, which will be in person is our goal. with much smaller teams. We typically have a 20 team. Now we will have a 10 girl team, all social distanced. We will have PPE for everybody. We will, instead of having team bags of supplies, we will have individual bags per girl of supplies. We will take their temperatures at the beginning of every practice. We will have hand sanitizer multiple times. There won't be any high fives, all of that kind of stuff. And but we will use a fluid model. So if something happens and we do have an outbreak or have to close down, we can go into a virtual model, and our volunteer coaches, who are mostly teachers, are used to that. So hopefully our goal is to be in person, but it will be a much scaled down program comparatively.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, we're an event company, and so a lot of our events got canceled, from our music festivals to our pro motocross race. So we've had to work with MX Sports, Duval County Public Schools, and the city of Jacksonville with our events to kind of wait to see what is their plan to see if we can have them. And we actually weren't able to have any of those, so we had to go to more of a virtual model. And with Duval County Public Schools, we did virtual graduations for all of the high schools. And so that was something that we never thought of doing before, but because of the new normal, we kind of had to adjust. And so that's something that we took on during COVID, and we just finished those up. And so now it's moving forward. What other events can we move to a virtual model to be able to do that?
All right, thank you. Our next question, I know some of you guys already touched on it, but it's, what guidelines do you believe would have to take place for returning to play in the future from any local organizations? I know you mentioned like taking away the high-fiving, doing things different instead. Would you like to be more specific and give us some more examples?
Sure. I mean, I think obviously the whole PPE stuff with the masks and gloves if need be, but mostly just trying to make sure we social distance with our group so they're not close to each other. Obviously, the only thing that's going to make everybody feel comfortable is to have a vaccine or a cure for this, right? Our concern moving forward is we rely on parents to make these decisions. The girls want to do it, but of course the parents are the ones that have the ultimate decision making, and rightly so. And will they feel safe sending their daughter back or any of their children back to do any kind of contact or sports or any of that? And I think that the challenge is some may not feel comfortable until there is a cure or a vaccine for this. So us trying to do everything we possibly can with hand washing and hand sanitizer, because we're talking at Girls on the Run, 3rd through 5th grade girls mostly. So we're talking young girls. So trying to keep them and educate them, which will be great for when they grow up and get into high school sports and college sports. But at the same time, I mean, there's our challenge, is just trying to do every little thing we can, including testing if we have to, and ask them to be tested, that kind of stuff.
For us in Duval County Public Schools, we have found that the cleaning of our facilities is going to look a lot different. Our weight rooms, making sure that we're cleaning the equipment between every individual's use, and then between the entire team's use from day to day. And so we have been looking at different products that we can bring in, different types of machine. Clorox 360 has a machine, and we're partnering with the JAGs to bring that in to help us make sure that our facilities are clean, our athletic training rooms, our aerobics rooms, our wrestling rooms, so that our student athletes feel safe. One of our biggest concerns for high school athletics is, what is it going to look like for fans? And we're kind of gauging what our graduations this week look like. So we've set protocols in place for where individuals will sit, how they will come into the gate, how they will exit the gate. But to be honest, without a whole lot of football fans in the stands, it makes it very difficult to have high school athletics, because the football admission is what not only pays for the most expensive sport, which is football, but also helps offset the cost for our non-revenue generating sports like golf and cross country and swimming and tennis and those sports where we don't charge admission.
Okay, and Tammy, what guidelines and/or support has the Florida High School Athletics Association given you during this time?
So the FHSAA currently, on Monday night, there was a board of directors meeting, and the board of directors is made up of superintendents, board members from their district, principals, athletic directors. And so currently they went with the recommendation from the governor, which was to begin sports on July 27th. And they're giving the districts the latitude. If they feel safe to do that, they can begin on July 27th or any modified version of that. And they have been they said that they will be very flexible with the districts in starting our sports, because a lot of us don't feel comfortable starting on July 27th. As I stated earlier, we are in phase 2 of our return to activity. So right now we're not doing any team activities. We're doing a little bit of equipment, but no shared equipment. It's all individual equipment. So we're getting some guidance from the FHSA, but we're also looking to our Sports Medicine Advisory Council for them to provide some input with, so that we can feel safe to be able to bring our student athletes back to full competition whenever CDC guidelines and the NFHS, our National Federation for High School Sports, and the FHSAA gives us the thumbs up.
All right, guys, I'll be taking over from here on out. So, Ms. Talley, when do you think high school sports will start? Like the first game, the first Friday night lights that we'll have for the season?
So it's all going to depend really on when we feel comfortable to begin fall sports. So typically the way the season works is in the old normal, school was going to start on August 10th and fall sports were going to begin on July 27th. So that's about a 2-week difference. Now that school is possibly going to be pushed back, and our school board is having a vote this Thursday on the new start date for school. So we will bring our practice date in line with what that school start date is. And again, making sure that we know when our student athletes are going to be safe. So based on the FHSA calendar, preseason for our football teams typically begin in that middle August. If we don't get started until August 10th or after for practicing sports, we may have to push back those Friday night lights where we could possibly maybe not have a preseason classic. We really just don't know what that looks like right now, because I say this all the time as an old coach, the phrase student athlete, you've got to be a good student before you can be an athlete. Well, we have to get our kids back in school and be students before we can have them participating in sports. So we're really at the mercy of the safety and then when we're going to get back to school.
Okay, yeah, safety is definitely important. Mr. Carroll, the same question applies to you with the LPGA. When's the next event, whether it has fans or no fans?
We start next week, restart, I should say. We played 4 events in January and February. And so it's been a long process. The no fans aspect is hard for us. Clearly, it's hard for everybody, but particularly for us. A lot of our title sponsors sponsor the events because it's a big event in the community, meaning it's the thing to do in Grand Rapids or Toledo or, Midland, Michigan, and some smaller cities. We do have some others that are about, entertainment and corporate events and different aspects. But when you don't have fans, it's pretty tough. So I think for the foreseeable first 3 or 4 events, we will not have fans, and more likely after that. But one of the questions I liked was about, starting up, and that's what you asked about. We have looked at the PGA Tour as a blueprint for sure, because they've been playing since June. And tennis, I think, is another one, because we're all, the global events that don't have too much contact, when we're out there playing. I'd also lump Major League Baseball and the NFL together, because they're U.S. events that are, teams are playing in their home cities is the plan. And then the bubble leagues are the MLS, NBA, and NHL. So you can learn a lot from each of the other ones. I mean, we look at what everybody's doing, but we've talked the most with the PGA Tour. We have a really close relationship with them. So let's see, I leave on Tuesday. I'll be in Toledo, Ohio for 2 weeks because we have back-to-back events there. I just took my COVID test this morning, the saliva test, and sent it off to the testing lab. I should know in the next couple of days, and I don't have any symptoms, so I think I'm fine. We take another test once we arrive at site because people are coming from everywhere. You know, the players are from a lot of different countries, and there's staff coming from a lot of different locations. So we take another test once we get to site, and then it goes on from there. So we're being as careful as we can. Every precaution. We're not going to be in restaurants. There's no group dinners or, you know, things that we would normally do. So it's going to be, you know, I hate to say it, but a new normal, and we'll figure it out.
All right, yeah, it's definitely encouraging to see that we're kind of taking these steps to slowly coming back. And then same question for you, Ms. Kennedy. When's the next event for Airstream?
So as of right now, our next event will be September 26th. We're working with MX Sports now. It's a pro motocross race, and kind of the same thing that Brian was saying. We have racers coming from all over, and so we're kind of waiting to see if they're coming from New York. They might not be able to come here and then go race at another event the next weekend. And so that's the third date that we've had that we've actually had to move it due to COVID. And so we're just kind of at the mercy of MX Sports and other states right now to see if we're going to be able to have that event.
And speaking on events, with the recent spikes in cases rising around the state, how will this affect your ability to work with different sponsors in the long term? And will this transform how sponsorship packages are presented across the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, it's affecting us right now. It's really hard to get sponsors for an event when you don't necessarily know what the event's going to look like, and you don't necessarily know if the event's even going to happen. And so it's really hard to go to a sponsor and get them to buy into an event to be the title sponsor for a really big number when you don't know, are there going to be fans there? Is it going to be on TV? What is it going to look like? And then a lot of businesses have been affected in their own way where they don't have that type of revenue that they can spend on sponsorships or marketing. And so I think we'll see that play into effect for the next few months until we finally get a good idea and a grasp on what our event's going to look like and when are we fully going to be able to be back to normal.
Yeah,
Okay,
Kennedy brings up a good point, because for us in athletics, I stated this before, if we have a really good football team and we have really good weather, then we're going to be able to pay the bills. But if we're at the mercy of the weather and having a hurricane or just it raining on a Friday night and then having to only maybe have 50% capacity at our games, then we've always been able to rely on our community sponsors. And so right now that's kind of difficult because some businesses have been closed, some are just now opening up, and they're not feeling as generous to give to the schools, because really they're just trying to, you know, save their businesses and making sure that they're afloat and paying their employees. So it's just a full cycle of needing fans in the stands and needing, you know, businesses to support our high school sports.
And it's similar for us. Kennedy raised a good point, you know, that it's very hard to find new sponsors right now. We are taking our existing ones and doing what we can with them. And in some ways it's worked out okay for us because we have a fairly full schedule for next year already. So we didn't have too many holes to fill. But if you look at our schedule, you know, all the terms are different. And so we could be, one tournament could be in the first year of a 3-year deal. Another tournament might be in the third year of a 4-year deal. But for anybody that was in there last year that could not play in 2020, we just said, hey, how about, you know, instead of, you know, if you can't play, you can't play, but let's just move it to 2021. That'll be your last year. So that's worked out well for us. So now we have a fairly full schedule, so we don't have to look for too many new partners, and that's a relief.
Okay, thank you guys for those awesome answers. So this question is more geared towards Ms. Lasko. Ms. Lasko, being the executive director of Girls on the Run, with the students now, you know, being delayed 2 weeks going back to school, then who knows after that if it spikes back up and they can't return to school. How will you be kind of delivering your programs? Will it be virtually or will it be the other way?
Yeah, we're going to use, Doug, we're going to use a fluid model, and hopefully we're going to start out in person. We're actually looking at using parks. We have several sites at parks already. And so if schools don't allow us to come back onto campus, which we totally understand, we're going to try to utilize parks and pull from all the schools into those parks. But of course, our teams will be much smaller, so then our whole season will be smaller. But if need be, we can go in and out of a fluid model, meaning we can go virtually. But as you know, like athletics, Girls on the Run with our life skills teaching and everything is very socially and physically close in proximity. So it's very hard to do that virtually. to get the real feel out of it. And of course, our 5K will go away until we can absolutely feel safe. We can bring it back. We'll do on-site 5Ks with just those 10 girls per team and not our large end of season celebration with every one of our 6 county sites.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So this is kind of the question for everybody. So with the NBA starting up next Friday, thank God. And then we have the PGA kind of returning, slowly but surely having events here and there. Have you guys been kind of following suit and looking at their blueprints and how they're restarting their organizations? And then if Brian want to start.
Sure. Yeah, our players, we have a great relationship with our players. I think it comes down to success in regard to this question comes down to the relationship between the organization and its players and communication. So for us, our Mike Wan is our commissioner, and he's incredible with both those aspects. The players love him, they respect him, and we've had a lot of different calls with our players to keep them updated along the way. I think the NBA has been really successful in getting back quickly and having a plan and being organized quickly because of the relationship between the NBA Players Association and the NBA. In the question, it was worded about the National Football League and the players speaking out on Twitter over the weekend. I think they're getting there, in terms of finding out how to make it all work and everybody feel safe. But that is a big question. And that, again, I think it comes down to the relationships, and you'll see the leagues that make it work and the ones that don't make it work, and that'll be why.
Would you care to comment, Ms. Tammy Talley?
Yeah, for us, we are looking to the NFHS, the National Federation for High Schools. They have a plan for what that looks like when we return. And so we're following the guidance from them, as well as our other local state associations and how it looks for them when they return to play. So we're taking a whole bunch of different models. Plus, I serve on the FIAAA Board of Directors, as well as the FACA. So we get a lot of good information from our coaches and from our athletic directors around the state.
Okay. And then another question for you, Ms. Tammy. What restrictions do you think the future of high school athletics will have, and how will it impact high school athletics as a whole? So, going into the new year 2021, will things just be like back to normal like that, or will those still be kind of some issues there, some other restrictions?
Well, I think the restrictions are the obvious, the safety and all the protocols, getting people in and out of games, getting people, temperature checked and wearing a mask. But my biggest concern really is, again, fans in the stands and how that's going to look. Like I said, even if it's at 50%, we're going to have them seated in their areas and 6-foot distancing, and hopefully not in, close proximity for more than 15 minutes, all the things that the Department of Health and the CDC tells us. But I wish I had that crystal ball to say I knew what it was going to look like on September 1st or, January 1st, 2021. It's my hope, for the sake of our student athletes and their mental health, that we're able to get back to some type of normal, so that they can be participating in sports and learning those characteristics of, teamwork and hard work and determination and all of those things.
Now, with you saying there's a potential half capacity, will there be a priority, you think, of just family and high school students, or will there be just anyone that first come, first serve?
I've heard a couple of different models. Some people have said whatever the capacity is, if your stadium capacity is 5,000, then you'd only be allowed to allow in 2,500, and then you'd have to social distance them. I've heard some say they would only, like graduations right now, they're allowing, 2 to 4 family members and then social distancing them. So there are a whole bunch of different models, and we would just have to look at those and see what works best for Duval County Public Schools.
Thank you. And then when it comes to your coaches and your staff, are there going to be any obstacles that will be, for the return of school once the first day of school? Will there be those temperature checks for sure? Will there be, them have to wearing face masks 24/7, gloves, all that? Yep.
Right now we have all of those protocols in place where There's going to be an app. Duval County Public Schools will have an app that's going to be very similar to the QR code that we use in athletics, where teachers will have to sign in via this app and answer those questions. They'll be wearing masks. They'll be having some very creative things with the change of classes, with riding the buses, with going to the cafeteria or the library and what that looks like, with the social distancing as well.
Okay, thank you. And then this question is going to be for Mr. Carroll, and this is a different topic, and this is more in regards to the LPGA. So to provide some background information of the next question, with major sports relying on broadcasting income, the global value of sports media rights is considered around $50 billion worldwide, but about half of that is accounted for by just 10 sport leagues, which includes golf. So with this information in mind, what strategies are the LPGA and golf industries adopting in response to this disruption?
The biggest thing is constant communication with our partners. You know, you can rely on you have contracts with everybody, and you can certainly rely on those, but we try to take a long-term view, especially with sponsors and networks that we've worked with for a long time. So we try to continue to provide value. We did a World Golf Tour esports kind of a gaming thing where 8 of our players played against each other in a bracket style, 7 consecutive weeks. So one got knocked out each week, and did something like that. That was fun, just for 45 minutes a day, just to provide some content. We did a simulator game. We had 2 players from Korea play against 2 players in the US. And so that was kind of fun. So as much as possible, you can't go out and create events. And we didn't have the sponsorship or the money to do the match, which the PGA Tour did, or the driving for relief. I think they did a couple of those in May. So we didn't do any live exhibitions. We did do a mixed exhibition with the PGA Tour, which we will push out next week as a YouTube video feature. But it's hard. It really was, and it forced us all to try to be creative and try to be in constant communication. But there's no perfect answer to that one.
Thank you for that. And now we have a question from the audience. So this question, it says, after the cure for COVID comes, and definitely will, how does the future of sport look? Does it go completely back to last normal, or does it look even better? So will the participants and fans always be paranoid about it resurfacing, or will the next pandemic, will the participants and fans always be paranoid about the next pandemic, or will fans flock back to sports? And I'm going to start with Ms. Tammy Talley.
I definitely think that it makes us pause and think about how we are doing things, reminding us about washing our hands and cleaning our facilities, and making sure that, I feel like a broken record, but making sure that our fans feel safe when they come into our facilities, making sure that our student athletes are doing the right thing so that they're safe. Not only, because I feel like we do a really good job with protocols and procedures and guidelines when they're with us, but we can't control them when they get away from us, when they're not in school, when they're not participating in athletics, and they're going to the beach and they're gathering in these big groups, or they're going to, family reunions, or participating in events that just aren't safe, where they could possibly contract something and then bring it back to school or to our activities.
Okay, thank you. And then Ms. Lasko, do you think there'll be an increase in events, just kind of branch off that question, for you and your girls?
Well, I hope that at some point we get back to normal as far as our ratios and our numbers, and most of our fundraising events are all around running too. So getting back to those in-person running events. However, I think this has made us all wake up to some things that the protocols that we are putting in place, like Tammy said, I think will live with us forever. I mean, I think it's a good education for our young people, and for us too, to constantly think about, wash your hands when you come out here and practice. Have you taken their temperature today? Everyone's going to be used to doing those kind of things. And also just who were you around? Do you know who you were around? Were they sick? And because this won't be the last pandemic, I think our world will see. And so I think that we just need to, just like we changed our world after 9/11 and how we do things with safety and security, I think it's going to be the same thing moving forward with everything we do, from nonprofit to school athletics to everything.
All right, thank you for that. And then Kennedy, I know there's probably events scheduled for 2021, but in the event of the cure coming out and then things are going back to the normal, do you think you'll be flooded with a bunch of opportunities to hold more events in the Jacksonville area?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope.
Yeah.
That once this is all gone in a way that we're able to host more events, but just like Laura said, you know, we will be bringing all those policies over, which will kind of change our event models completely, because now we'll have more expenses moving forward because we'll want to implement all of those different safety and health protocols. And so we'll have to find ways to bring in more revenue to cover all of those expenses. But I definitely do think we'll see more events in 2021.
And I'll take the opportunity to preach just a little bit to, it's an interesting time for everybody in college that for the timing of this. The lesson is save money. You know, people are getting through this, individuals and organizations that are successful in working their way through this have some money in the bank to be able to do it. And you know, you've seen people losing their jobs and losing a lot more than that. But it's a big lesson in your 20, 21, 22-year-old time frame. It's a huge thing to have some money in the bank to get through things like this.
And then speaking
Great
of,
point,
you know,
Brian.
so speaking of, you know, like advice for us college students, you know, even if there was no COVID, is there any advice you guys want to share? Because I know we have I'm pretty sure a full class here from the sport management program. So starting Miss Laska, any advice for people wanting to achieve their dreams of working in sports?
You know, honestly, I think if that's what you want, you go after it. I mean, period. I think that the beautiful thing about our world now is there are so many opportunities. I mean, I went to college 100 years ago, it feels like. And even then, there were more opportunities than there were for my parents or my grandparents, what they thought they could be, especially as a female. However, there are so many options, even in the athletic world. What I've learned sitting on this ad hoc committee with UNF is like, there's so many different positions. So, I mean, if you want to be a part of it, there's all different ways to be a part of it. So if that's what you want, go for it.
All right, thank you. And then Kennedy, being a UNF Sport Management alumni, I'm sure a lot of people in the crowd can relate to you. So do you have any advice for anyone that's trying to, you know, get to where your position is or even get higher than that?
I just think it's really important to get involved as much as you can. And right now is a good opportunity to get involved. A lot of companies are needing help because they've had to either let people go due to COVID. So right now is when a lot of companies are needing help, and there's a lot of stuff that you can do from home and get involved. Take advantage of volunteer opportunities, internship opportunities. The job I have now is because of an internship that I had in college. And so I think it's just really important to take on those opportunities and just go put your whole self into it and make sure you make a good impression and network. And just like Laura said, if you want to be in sports, there's a place for you. And there's so much more out there than just working for the NFL or working for MLB or anything like that. There's just a lot of opportunities, so you just have to find them.
And then Miss Tammy Talley, you care to comment?
Yes, I agree 100% with Kennedy with regards to involvement, because I can give a perfect example. I had a student that contacted me. He's thinking about taking sports management for his master's next year. And so he reached out to me during the pandemic and said, hey, can I just shadow you? Can I, help you do some stuff from home? If you have little projects, just send them to me. Just by him doing that and me seeing his work ethic, he's actually a teacher and a coach at one of a charter school. And because I thoroughly enjoyed working with him and saw his how hard of a worker he was and how he was consistent on reaching out to me and turning things in and having them done right, that he actually had 3 different opportunities to teach and coach and be an athletic director in our district just because of getting involved with me. But if I could give any advice to the students that are watching this webinar, it would be to develop some type of elevator pitch about yourself. Nobody likes to talk about themselves and all the wonderful things, the qualities that they have, but you never know who you're going to meet when you're in the elevator, when you're at a ball game, when you're at the grocery store. So feel comfortable talking about yourself and bragging about the good things that you can do, and let people know that, because if you don't let them know, there's not a whole lot of other people out there that are going to do that. I assure you, my job, 90% of my job with regards to emails and phone calls are all the negative things that people are doing and how terrible the coaches are and they're not taking enough time. So build up your resume, develop an elevator pitch, talk good about yourself, introduce yourself to people. Don't be afraid to get involved. And I think all students should be involved in sports in some shape, form, or fashion, whether you're athletic or not.
Thank you.
Can I follow up? I just want to follow up to what Tammy said. And I say this kind of lightheartedly, but I'm in our office right now. And so I always talk to students about having an elevator pitch, and our elevators in our building are now restricted to one person. So I feel like we're going to be changing post-pandemic. It's going to be a stairway conversation. So I think it's a great point, but just thinking about how things have changed so much, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Great. Thank you. And then kind of backpacking to Laura. So will you be using Zoom, you think, in the near future, to help kind of keep the girls together and just kind of keep those friendships and relationships, maintained?
Most likely it won't be the Zoom platform, but it'll be something like Google, because Zoom doesn't have the security like we need, and also the cost of Zoom for the number of girls and the number of hours we'd have to be online. But yeah, we will be using some sort of a video platform.
All right, thank you. And then next question would be for Mr. Carroll. So with the recent, social justice issues facing LPGA, how is that organization handling that, and what's kind of the future looks for that?
We are starting a diversity task force sort of to look at, I think the biggest thing for us is race. There's just a real imbalance with blacks in golf, and how do we change that? And I think we're incredibly strong from a gender perspective. I think we're 70% female staff at the LPGA, and any issues around that, I think we're pretty well covered. I think it's race where we want to improve. We have a few black golfers that are on our tour, and so that's our first focus. We've just started a few meetings there to try to get more. We have a girls golf program in conjunction with the USGA, and that's really strong. But again, that's overwhelmingly white, and we want to get more black girls involved in golf. We want to get more playing professionally. We want to get more working for us. So that's going to be a big focus in the short term.
Thank you. And to also backpack off that question with the pandemic, it's kind of just natural that there will be kind of it's a grim outlook. And so how have you guys in your organizations been able to maintain a positive outlook in the sense of just maintaining positivity with everyone around you in your organizations? Let's start with Kennedy.
Yeah, I think it was a little hard at first because we're a small staff, and so we're used to all being in the office together and having that team morale. And so when we first were all working from home, it was really hard to try to adapt to be at your house by yourself when you're used to being in the office all together, going to lunch together, going to meetings together. And so I think we just really had to find ways that we could still connect over Zoom, and made sure that when we were on Zoom, we took some time to, not just be business, but, ask people how their day were going, what they do yesterday, and just still keep those connections with everyone. And so now we're back in the office, which is really nice. And it's nice to have the whole team back together for sure.
And Laura?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things that's probably happened is Girls on the Run, like most, like school year, everything else, it's the same thing, different year, right? We have this cyclic sort of program where it goes from our fall season, our training, blah, 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 and everything's kind of the same. Well, what's been positive about this is it shook up our status quo a little bit. We've had to really think outside the box. You really have to look at everything very differently now. And it's probably refreshed us a little bit. And we have a small staff too, Kennedy, in the sense of we only have 3. We just had come off an awesome fundraiser with the Gate River Run that we do every year. So thank goodness we were really high on that. And Nelson, this just was dropped on us and everything sort of stopped. And then now it's the unknown. That unknown of what is happening just makes it harder. Then the unknown changes every day. But between just thinking outside the box, we've had a lot more collaboration with our councils in Florida, girls and run councils in Florida, we do a Zoom call every week, which we didn't used to touch base, but when we needed something. So now it's just like, you know, what are you doing? How are we doing it? Our national organization across the country is doing a lot more collaboration. And then from a nonprofit standpoint, what's been nice is that our board has stepped up a whole lot. You know, it's when you're doing well, it's kind of like, oh, we're not needed, but now they know they're needed and they see it. And so they've really stepped up. So those have been the positives for us.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Brian, within the LPGA, you know, I'm sure you guys have been doing a lot of more telecommunications, but when you are in person, has it been more positive than negative?
Yeah, we encouraged everybody to just make sure you check in on people. You know, somebody you may not work with all the time, just shoot quick email, quick text, quick Zoom call. How's it going? What's your family up to? You know, things like that. We want to reach out to each other. For me personally, I've been reading a lot about positive psychology, and I was a psych minor in college, so I'd be interested in it anyway. But I just happened to come across it during this, wild times and pandemic and social justice and everything that's happening. And so, like, positive psychology is about, like, what's happiness and what does it mean for me versus anybody else? And resilience is like my word for 2020. So when you're having one of those inevitably, down days that are going to happen to everybody during this kind of thing, I just Googled resilience, and, like, there's 5 pillars of resilience and 7 tips to better resilience. And, just things like that. None of it will shock you. Just etiquette, exercise and sleep. And I keep hearing meditation. I might try that, but that's the individual aspect of it. So, you got to do what you got to do to get through this and stay in touch with people and things like that.
Thank you. And then Ms. Tammy Talley, care to comment about, how you even maintain that positive culture with your coaches?
Well, I will tell you, it's been very difficult because I am completely over Zoom and GoToMeeting and everything that is not hugging somebody or high-fiving or fist bump, and I am done with it. But I have been reading all of John Gordon's series, the Stay Positive series. And Brian, I cannot agree with you more about just staying in touch with people and just reaching out to them. And I try to make sure that I communicate with, because I have a very large staff. So I'm over 42 schools, which means I have 42 athletic directors, I have 42 bookkeepers, I have 42 principals, I have close to 3,000 coaches. So trying to communicate with them and not, overflowing their inbox with emails. I communicate via text. I try to pick up the phone and call them. We're all in a GroupMe app. And then I also communicate with athletic directors and county ADs across the state and the nation. And it is important about that mental health, is just staying connected. And like Kennedy said, just talking about something else other than work, because it is very difficult. And I'm just ready to, go into Dr. Sweeney's class and present to all these students, as opposed to this screen and this computer and this headphone. I'm over it. I am over it.
I think a lot of us college students are also going through crazy. I mean, we miss a lot of our friends we can't see on the daily. So yeah, thank you for that. And then a question from the audience, one of our students for you, Ms. Tammy Talley, is that, she wants to get into public school athletics. So what would be like the initial steps into getting that, and the best way to get her foot in the door?
Okay, shameless plug, not just for her asking the question, but everybody on this call, we need you to coach. And so the way that process works is there's a online onboarding where you apply online to get your coaching certificate. And then you have to be first aid and CPR certified. You have to go through some ethics training. You have to get fingerprinted. And then the final step in the process is taking a rules exam for the sport that you want to coach, and then an exam for the FHSA bylaws or the middle school constitution. And we have 36 sports in high school. I have 13 sports in middle school. So there are plenty opportunities for all of you and your brothers and sisters and your aunts and uncles and anybody else who has an interest in sports and want to coach. Come see me. tallyt@duvalschools.org. Email me your resume and I'll send you the info.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So we actually have another question in the audience. They actually have a brother who is in high school. So they're just actually curious to see, once it's back to normal, are there going to be any punishments if they don't follow the potential guidelines and protocols, if they don't, again, follow COVID-19 protocols and guidelines that you know of?
So as
That makes sense.
if it's a rule with regards to students and them not following it, that would go underneath the code of conduct. And so they would have rules and regulations from the dean's office. But we're going to be very strict in athletics and making sure that everybody follows the rules, because as soon as one of our teammates don't follow the rules, then all of us could be subject to COVID or some other type of sickness, and then the whole sport be shut down, and we don't want that. So if you're not going to follow the rules with regards to safety in athletics, you won't be a part of that team.
Okay, thank you. And this is a question for everybody. And finally, not to be insensitive to those who have been personally affected by this pandemic, but can you guys share some positives that you've seen or believe that will come from this time? So I'm gonna start with Kennedy.
There you go. As far as like Airstream Ventures in high school 912, we really had to do some brainstorming as a staff, because all of our events are in person and we're an event company, and that's where all of our revenue comes from. So we really had to think, what are some things that we can do to fill that void right now? And I talked about the virtual graduations that we did with DCPS. That was a huge hit. The parents loved it, the school loved it, the kids loved it. And now a positive that came from that is that will probably be something that we will try to do again next year. How, if we are still having in-person graduations next year, how can we still offer this virtual graduation, which will be really good for us, because that'll be another source of revenue, but something that we would have never thought of or would have never had without COVID. And I think there'll be some other events like that as well. We do life seminars that are normally in person, and we normally have around 100 people there, but maybe there's a way that we move those to where they're virtual, and now instead of 100 people, we can have thousands of people and reach even more students and parents in the community. So I think there's some positives that did come out of it for Airstream and probably a lot of other companies as well.
All right, thank you. And then Ms. Lasko.
It's the same, really, is thinking that all of our in-person programs or fundraisers, like our Soulmates program, which is a peer-to-peer fundraiser, and our cupcake run that happens in the town center, it's a fundraiser for us too, that offering a virtual option from now on, it'll just be an automatic from now on. And it will be able to reach an audience beyond, Northeast Florida because of that.
All right, thank you. And then Mr. Carroll.
Well, I think it's the usual, extra safety, more flexibility, things like that, different processes that will be some of the silver lining. I think from a media perspective, it's hard not to focus on the maybe an acceleration toward digital. I think, everybody's familiar with cord cutting, I think, and not having cable anymore. And Netflix subscriptions and use is up, in this period. Esports has done really well. I have a friend that works for Wave, which is, a social sort of platform for content. And they said they had the best quarter they've ever had, just because so many people are more focused on that. So I think that was already happening, but I think it's going to accelerate a little bit more in my industry.
All right. Thank you. And then Ms. Tammy.
For us in education, obviously it was professional development. For our coaches and our athletic administrators to have the opportunity while they were at home to perfect their craft, to take some additional classes, to attend a webinar, to sign up for a training, to get a different certification. It was really helpful for us. And I thought, that was one positive thing that came from all of this, is being able to have the individuals that weren't teaching and weren't coaching to work on their professional development. And at the end of the day, it was a nice reset. Going on a run through our neighborhood, people were just nicer. People weren't driving as fast through the neighborhood. They were waving more. They were taking the time to speak. Everybody's yard looked way nicer. So it was a nice I think it was a really nice reset, because I always do like to try to find the positive in things. And so the two things for me would have been the professional development and just, that people were nicer and just a nice reset.
All right, thank you. And then we're getting quite a bit of questions here from the audience. And this one, again, is for you, Ms. Tammy Talley. So in the event of players being able to play on the high school fields, and then with the recent events of the social injustice, will high school players be allowed to voice their opinions, whether that's on the back of their helmet with a little sticker or something, or just anything to show their support?
So again, they'll have to follow the rules and regulations from our student code of conduct. And
Okay.
then individual schools can have their own school rules that are sometimes stricter than the code of conduct. And then a lot of times our athletic teams have even stricter rules because participating in sports is a privilege. It's not a right.
Thank you for that. So yeah, we have less than, what were we saying, Dr. Sweeney?
Yeah, can I jump in? I just want to do a follow-up to the question, and I kind of fielded it to Doug from the chat, just to give a little bit more insight. What the question is really kind of addressing, like, and I don't know what your code of conduct is. I know that we talk about athletics is really kind of, what did you say? Not a right. But the idea of what they were asking was, will the high school students be able to engage in social justice reforms at school, including things on their jerseys or at stadiums that really are centered around the Black Lives Matters movement? And that might be too large of a question, but I don't know if the district, how those things play into what your guidelines are.
So I'm sure that our code of conduct has started to address those this summer and add those into our policies. But we also work, we have our own school police. And so they have certain rules for attending athletic events and certain things that, you know, like can't bring in big backpacks. They don't allow students to wear RIP shirts. And so that's to kind of, because of the gang relation with the RIP. So anything specific to the code of conduct, I am sure that the students would be, not the student athletes, but just students in general, that they always have that opportunity to voice their concerns, and student teachers and faculty members in the school that they can go to when they have concerns.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Back to you, Doug.
All right, so we have less than about 5 minutes. So let me see if any more questions from the audience. Let me look real quick. Apologize about the wait, guys. So this is for Brian. So are you aware of any positions that have been affected negatively by COVID-19? Any advice for someone looking to get into the LPGA regarding the change of perspectives?
We're fortunate enough to keep our staff intact. That's the plan, you know, going forward. For the rest of this year, I think we'll be able to make it through. We'll play a decent number of tournaments, it looks like. We don't have a ton of entry-level jobs. The most are in communications. And so if that's a specific interest, I'm happy to chat. Dr. Sweeney has my email. It's bc@lpga.com. But I'm happy to help. I mean, the communications aspect of it is pretty cool. We call them media officials, but they go out to our tournaments and deal with our players and local media. There's still some national media involved, but it's a pretty good job. Usually 2 at each tournament, 1 for the ones that are international. So, I mean, it's a pretty wild ride, and you go from, you know, Dallas, Texas to California to Toledo, but then you're going to end up in Singapore and Thailand and maybe Australia, you know? So that's a pretty cool gig for someone who's entry level. I don't know if we hire as many right out of school, but certainly with a year or 2 of decent experience and a lot of golf knowledge. So that's the best entry level path there.
All right, thank you. So that essentially concludes our webinar series. I just would like to say thank you to Ms. Laura Laska, Mr. Brian Carroll, Ms. Tammy Talley, and Ms. Kenny Talley for joining us today. So later tonight at 6:30 p.m., we have our, excuse me, let me pull this up real fast. We have our,
Doug, can I ask a question really quick?
yes, you can.
Brian's been on another panel, so I know Brian has to go, but you can say something again, Brian. I've asked all of our panelists throughout the webinar series to give one piece of life advice to our graduating seniors. So if you could just give them one piece of advice, and you have 15 seconds.
All right, I'll do it. I'll go first, and then I do need to go, and thank you to everybody for setting this up. My life advice, this relates to this positive psychology thing that I mentioned. It's about happiness. And what I've learned about it is it's all about like what's inside you and not about money and fancy cars and what other people do on social media and worrying about all that. I think it's like focus on yourself, figure out what makes you happy. It is hard, you know, adulting is a term and it's a real thing, but it's very possible to be really happy. And I think it's more about focusing what's inside you rather than what's outside around you with everybody else.
Awesome. Thank you. Laura?
Yeah, I agree with that. Be true to yourself. When you get to be our age, you understand that money isn't all that important. Your time and your happiness really is. Because when you look back on life, you want to feel like you made an impact in somebody else's life. So just know that that's what you're striving for. They're going to remember you for who you were, not what you did.
Awesome. Thank you. Tammy?
I would definitely say life is about people. It's about relationships, commitment, loyalty. In the end, we're not measured by for coaches, our win-loss record. We're not measured by how much money we have, you know, in our bank accounts. But I tell coaches this all the time. It's about the difference that we make in the lives of children. And, you know, being a coach, you have that opportunity to make that impact. So making a difference through relationships would be my biggest advice.
Thank you. And Kennedy?
You can tell she's my mom because I was going to say relationships are really important. The people you surround yourself with, whether it be, you know, your family, your friends, or the people that you work with. Something I've learned that's really important when finding a job is that you work with people you love. So relationships are really important. And then, you know, as a Osprey alumni, especially from the sport management class, I just want to welcome all of you as you're about to graduate and enter into the working field. There's so many of us out there, so make sure to connect and to get involved and to stay involved with UNF as much as you can.
Thank you. Back to you, Doug.
All right, so yeah, so the official final wrap up, I just want to say thank you to all the panelists again for coming on and telling us about all these different types of, you know, challenges we're facing and then we'll face in the future. I also want to say thank you to my group who definitely helped, you know, we all worked as a great team together to putting this together. And then finally, the best person, Miss Dr. Sweeney. Without her, we wouldn't have the platform to be able to connect with others like the panelists and other people from our past webinars. So speaking of other webinars, we're going to have the final one tonight. It's going to be at 6:30. It's going to be about, I'm trying to share my screen, but it will not let me. It's going to be the college athletics return to play. So we're going to have Mr. Josh Baker, Mr. Kelly Brooks, Ms. Dee Kennedy, Mr. Bobby Kennan, and then Mr. Nick Morrow. So tune in for that webinar. And again, thank you guys all for coming out. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.